This is section 1.4. This is the study guide. Remember, study guides give you a ton of information at the top. Okay, so if you don't have your notes or you need a little refresher, all of this information is good information to read. This first set of examples asks you to identify the hypothesis and conclusion of each conditional statement. That's pretty easy. Your hypothesis, we're going to underline that once. I use blue. And you're going to underline the conclusion twice. I use red. You can do the same thing. You can use pens, colored pencils, whatever works for you. Now, if you're going to identify these two things, one way is to write it all out. So the reason we do the whole underlining thing is just to save you some time. The hypothesis comes after the word if and before the word then. It doesn't include if. The conclusion comes after the word then. It does not include the word then. So for number one, your hypothesis is today is Monday. Conclusion would be tomorrow is Tuesday. Okay, so you can pause this and do number two on your own if you like. That's your hypothesis and conclusion for number two. Number three, they ask you to write each conditional statement in an if-then form. So notice how this statement doesn't have the word if or then. Neither does this one. So you need to transform it into a form where you have the word if, then you talk a little bit about the hypothesis, and then the conclusion. So if you can remember back in our lesson, we talked about that little template that we made for ourselves. So it looks like this. I'll write it out for you. Okay, so hopefully that looks familiar to you. If the hypothesis, then the conclusion. That has the same meaning if you would structure the sentence this way. Conclusion, if, hypothesis. Those two mean the same thing as this one. You could say all or every, hypothesis, conclusion. Notice how I use if and then here. On this one, I only use if in the middle. I don't use then. And in this third one, I don't use if or then. Okay, so look at this number 3, all chimpanzees love bananas. Which one does that fit? There's no if, there's no then, so it's not these two. It's this guy. All chimpanzees love bananas. So we're talking about a hypothesis and a conclusion in here somewhere. Okay, so you need to make it look like this. You could say, if it is a chimp or chimpanzee, then it loves bananas. Now, there's other ways to do this. You didn't have to say it in here. You could have said, if an animal is a chimp, then it loves bananas, something like that. I used pronouns. That has nothing to do with math, but this one does. Okay, so you can pause this video, try this one on your own. Collinear points lie on the same line. Takes a little bit of time to write it out. But again, there's no if or then in this statement. So you need to use this guy. Or that's what this one looks like. You need to make it look like this one. So if the points are collinear, then they lie on the same line. That's your definition of collinear. 5 and 6, they want you to write a converse. Okay, so quick review. If you don't remember what a converse is, you can look up top here. It's a study guide. When you're writing a converse, the if and the then portion of the statement don't move. The things that move would be your blue words and your red words. And they don't always mean the same thing. The converse doesn't have to mean the same thing as the conditional. These forms up here all have the same meaning. For number 5, let's switch the red and the blue. What would it look like? If it can swim, then an animal was a fish. If you write that, it's okay. But we should be a little bit better with our pronouns. We should always put our pronouns second. So we're going to say if I'm using blue here. If an animal can swim, then we'll use the pronoun now. It is a fish. So if an animal can swim, then it's a fish. You can pause this, try number 6 on your own. This one's a little bit trickier. It's not stated as an if-then statement. This one is stated like this. So if it helps you change this statement so it looks like this, you could write, if you have right angles, then they are congruent. Then take the converse of that. Okay, the converse should look like, if you have 2 congruent angles, or if your 2 angles are congruent, then they have to be right angles. We're not talking about truth values right now, but these do not mean the same thing.